we're ready. You can
Oh,
jump right in. Why don't you just give us an overview of your background and how you got started with the New Yorker and
okay.
all that.
Yeah, hi. So I got started with the New Yorker, but well, let's see. My parents had a subscription to it, and so we always got it at the house. And of course, the only thing that I could really, when I was very young, the only thing that I liked were the cartoons. As I got older, I started to read the movie reviews, and that was about as far as I got. I would read some short stories. But I didn't really know that much about New Yorker cartoons, but a friend of mine, this was when I was a kid growing up in suburban Chicago, his dad had two Charles Adams volumes in his I don't even know if he had a library. They were just on a shelf. And I mean, this is goes back to when we used to play with like toy trains and cars and stuff like that. And I just remember going over there and I remember one of them was Monster Rally, and I think the other one might have been Homebodies.
Mhm.
And I just I looked through them one day and I saw these really dark, and I knew about the Addams Family TV show, but really, really dark cartoons. Like dark in color, but dark in message. Like,
Mhm.
you know, I mean, I'm going to get some of them wrong, but things like, well, I was a Boy Scout, and there was one where the guy who's like the editor of like a Boy Scout, you know, magazine, there's a suicide note, and he's going to commit suicide with a slingshot, and stuff like that. And they were all really, I just, we'd go over to Scott's place, and I'd say like, you play with the Hot Wheel cars. I want to look at these. So I looked at them, over and over again. And my father was he went to the Art Institute of Chicago, and he was an art director and a creative director. So we always had a lot of art supplies in the house. So yeah, and I drew, and then I kind of didn't know what I wanted to do. I went to college, and I was the pre-med for 2 years to make my mom happy, and tried to figure out like how I was going to like not tell her. How am I going to tell my mom that like, mm, well, maybe the C in calculus will tell her that I shouldn't go on to do this, but I was always drawing cartoons, in the school newspapers and stuff like that. And one way or another, I got myself to New York. And as soon as I got to New York, I started submitting, every week. I dropped the cartoons off at the New Yorker. And I know all I got were lots and lots of rejection notes. In those days, they were rejection notes. But finally, I guess it was always, I saw Jack Ziegler's cartoons. They were also I mean, I loved all the New Yorker cartoons, but when I
Mhm.
started seeing Ziegler's cartoons and then Roz Chast's cartoons,
Mhm.
um, you know, it, it was they were so delightful, and I love the absurdity and the
Mhm.
drawing in Ziegler's cartoons.
Mhm.
I mean, I still remember, and I think I tore out, and I had on my wall a guy who's like he's like in a flooded basement, and there's some sort of gigantic, machine, and there's water all over the place, and he's got um tools, and he's up to his waist in water, and he just says something like, instead I shall become a plumber of men's souls. And I thought you can do that. You can do that. So yeah, I immediately started going to the New Yorker. I did not immediately start selling. It took
Mhm.
years. I mean, a
Mhm.
long time. And finally, when I did get in, um, I, I became pretty good friends with Sam Gross,
Mhm.
and he has just such an incredible way of summing everything up. And we were coming back from lunch one day, and he says, yeah, yeah, you moved from Chicago, and I said, yeah. He said, not a lot of gag cartooning in Chicago. And it's true. There is
Mhm.
not a lot of gag cartooning in Chicago. Although I think a long time ago, Playboy and Esquire, their editorial was here, but it all moved to New York. And yeah, I was just, I mean, the delight of those cartoons was you know, it was under my skin. I couldn't get enough of it.
Yeah. Did you feel like you had to move to New York in order to start submitting, or it was just kind of coincided with you moving to New York?
Well, that's a good question, because I
Mhm.
think maybe Sam, with his, I think he knew that beneath, you know, I was working at this ad agency, Ogilvy,
Mhm.
but you know, it was, I took the job there because it was like close to the New Yorker, you know, and so you know, it's funny with that sort of analysis. I think it was sort of like, yeah, I think I needed to. I mean, I wanted to be in New York anyway. I
Mhm.
love New York, but when I found out that you could just drop your cartoons off at the New Yorker, you know, I think, yeah, I wanted to be there.
Mhm.
Wanted to be there.
So you would go on the Tuesday drop-off day, and that's how you got to meet Sam
Yeah,
Gross and
in those days,
Mhm.
they were on their, I think their office was on 43rd Street or something. And you'd go up the elevator, and literally there was like a bulletproof glass you know, thing with like a little slot, and there'd be a guy sitting behind there, and you'd slide your envelope under there, and that was
Mhm.
it. Yeah, and I'd go there, I'd fill an envelope,
Mhm.
then I'd uh go there at lunchtime. Yeah,
Mhm.
drop it off every week, and then the next week I'd come pick up the rejection slip and do it again.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And how long did it take you until you started
Selling there.
well, no, well,
Oh,
we could get to that, but
yeah.
going to the lunch and meeting the
Oh,
cartoonists and,
well,
getting in on that.
yeah, I mean, so uh I was generating a lot of rejected cartoons that were pretty good.
Mhm.
And I started, you know, through talking to other cartoonists, submitting them to other magazines,
Mhm.
and they started being the rejections from the New Yorker started getting bought at like a lot of magazines and stuff like that. And there and I ran into other cartoonists, and there was a group in New York at that time called the Cartoonist Association.
Mhm.
It wasn't the Cartoonist Society. It was,
Right.
I don't even know what it was. It was more for gag cartoonists, or I have no idea.
Mhm.
But somehow or another, I joined it, and they used to have really, really like interesting and fun parties, and I'd meet like, you know, a lot of my idols there.
Mhm.
And yeah, you know, there was a cadre of people who would kind of get together, and you know, we'd look at each other's work or try and support each other, and there were more markets.
Mhm.
So you know, I mean, I remember the Cartoonist Association had these meetings, and it was so fun for me to go, you know,
Mhm.
meet people like, you know, I mean, Roz Chast was there, and Ziegler would come, and,
Mhm.
you know, and I remember I was at a Cartoonist Association party. This was before I sold to the New Yorker, and it was at this place called the Selma Gundy Club, which is an old arts club on Lower Fifth Avenue. And
Mhm.
it was really wonderful. And you know, everybody was, I don't know, drinking. Well, don't don't. And somebody took a sign that said, do not put drinks on this table, you know, and put it like on the table, and then everybody started putting drinks on it. And I think it was Ziegler, you know, who turned to me, or Roz, and said, see that, that's a cartoon right there, or
Mhm.
something like that. I remember I was so desperate to get in, and I went to talks, but there really weren't any classes on it, and
Mhm.
New Yorker cartoonists didn't really teach classes. I mean, they, in those days, that was just such a pantheon. I mean,
Mhm.
but there was a cartoonist named Dana Fraden who
Mhm.
taught uh, a life drawing class, I think
Yeah.
at Parsons Night School. So I'm like,
Mhm.
oh, I'm going to take this class, and
Mhm.
I'm going to like find out from him, even though it's supposed to be life drawing, I'm going to, it'll be the keys to gag cartooning. Of course,
Right.
he didn't say a word about gag cartooning the whole time, but he did have some wonderful gesture drawing classes, and I still have a drawing that I did from that class framed in my house that was
Mhm.
really, really nice. But no, there wasn't a squeak about how
Uh-huh.
to do New Yorker cartoons.
And you weren't able to approach him after class or anything like that and talk
Um,
to him about
he
that?
would know. I mean, gosh, I wish I could remember. I've
Mhm.
probably blanked it, but if I did, it would have been something like, "Hi, um, I'm trying to do cartoons for the New Yorker," and I could imagine him looking at me and saying, "Not in this
Good
class,
luck.
kid."
Good
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
luck.
And I remember going to whenever a New Yorker cartoonist would like have a talk or something, I'd
Mhm.
try and go see it. There weren't a lot. Again,
Right.
they were either all working or they all lived up in Connecticut. But I remember one night, Lee Lorenz had a talk
Mhm.
somewhere, and I went and I was like, and I'd been selling. I mean, I was doing, and I went to this thing and I was like, oh, I'm going to take all these notes, and everything. And the first thing he says when he gets up there is if you're trying to become a New Yorker cartoonist, my advice is just don't do it. Find something else to do.
Oh no.
Now
Thanks.
let
Lee
so
Lorenz said that?
he did. He said
Wow.
he said, learn how to illustrate children's books or do something else.
I wonder why. Do you know why he would say something like that?
I think, based on the way the industry was going,
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
don't know when that was in the 90s or
Mhm.
something.
Yeah.
He was probably like, there aren't so many markets anymore. I mean, he might have had
Wow.
an image in his mind that you can't really make a living
Mhm.
doing this. And in fact, other New Yorker cartoonists who I really like have told me that too. I remember I ran into Mort Gerberg once
Mhm.
on the Upper West Side, and oh hi, I didn't know he lived around there, and by that
Mhm.
time I think I had been selling, and I bumped into him, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm drawing cartoons and this and that, and he might have misinterpreted me and thought that I'd quit my day job, and he was
Oh.
so scared. He's like, don't do that, don't do that. He felt kind of, all of a sudden some sort of latent sympathy for me came out.
Right.
Well,
Wow.
they
You
all saw the
take it.
writing on the wall then.
Mhm.
And they're just warning everybody, don't do it because
I mean,
it's not going to be here.
I don't know.
Wow.
I mean, yet uh, it was still a going,
Yeah.
it still is a going concern. I mean, and we've
Mhm.
seen all the other markets just wither,
Mhm.
and I
Yeah.
think I love gag cartooning. It's my first, I think I've
Mhm.
said this before because now I've become like a graphic novelist and a
Mhm.
historian. I've combined like my interest
Mhm.
that I always had in like, and I was writing, and I was trying to write a novel, and I was trying to write a screenplay, and I was writing sitcoms, and I was,
Mhm. Wow.
and I really was concentrating on that. And finally, through doing these graphic novels, I've been able to quit my day job
Wow. Great.
to do that. But I think as long as you know you and when I was in New York, if you had a chance of selling, and then you could go to lunch, I'm sure
Right.
some of your other guests have talked to you
Mhm.
about
Mhm.
Pergola des Artistes.
Yeah.
Oh my God,
Yeah.
I mean, that was worth the price of admission.
I'm sure.
Any,
Yeah.
except for the food.
You're there for the company, not the food.
Yeah.
The food was a little, let us say the food was kind of interesting.
Mhm.
I mean, I remember one day, I couldn't believe this. I just couldn't believe it. I mean, it's a lovely place, and it really was I mean, it may still be there as far as much, I don't know.
Mhm.
But the guy who ran it, and we all knew him. I think he was French. Either that or he had a good French accent. But in any case, he comes in there and he's like, "Oh, I made a wonderful cassoulet this weekend. I brought it in." And he brings a pot, like a big pot out to the table. "You must try it." I'm sure that wasn't health code, but
No.
whatever.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Yeah, we had I think it was Alex Gregory who
Uh-huh.
told us a hilarious story about one of the lunches. Well, he didn't even go to the lunch. Wasn't it? Was that Alex, Paul? I think it
Yeah, I
was.
think it was.
He-
It wasn't too long ago, so it must have been Alex.
Yeah, he told this story about going on a Tuesday to the drop-off day, and he was new and he was shy and
Yeah.
didn't quite know what to do with himself. But the cartoonists were getting ready to leave to go to lunch. And he didn't say who it was, but one of the older guys started pointing at people and saying, "You want to go to lunch? You want to go to lunch? Lunch, lunch, lunch." Literally skipped over Alex
Oh,
and then said, "You want to go to lunch? You want to go to lunch?"
oh,
And
no.
Alex was just
Yeah.
standing there.
Well,
And the
yeah, I
way-
won't name names on for bad stories like that. But I find he ended up going anyway. So yeah, I'm sure it wasn't as if it were that exclusive. I mean, it was like, but you could never tell. You literally could never tell who would show up because
Right.
I mean, you might have like the editor of like Punch magazine there or something. You know, you could
Wow.
never tell. And of course, the tablecloth was, I'm sure you've heard
Oh,
this, was white
yeah.
paper.
Yes.
So everybody was
Yeah.
just drawing. I still have,
Wow.
you know, I should have a, you know, a DNA analysis of some of the spills
Yeah.
that are on it to see what that food was made of over there. But I did love it. And then Sam would come on at the end and do the accountant thing, you know, and it was great.
That's awesome.
And sorry, it's kind of just thinking about it, it's kind of nostalgic.
Yes, of
Oh.
course. Yeah, it's a shame they don't do it anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody
Well,
that's
go ahead. Sorry.
yeah, everybody that's been on that's been to that Tuesday lunch is just, you know, they sigh when they talk about it.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh, come on, guys.
Well,
Yeah.
it really was quite wonderful. I mean, Warren Miller was there, and you know, you could never tell who would show up. I mean, you might, you know, Ed Sorrell might. I mean, there were a lot of whenever people were visiting, you know, like from cartoonists from around the world somehow would go there.
That's
And they
amazing.
go back to their countries and say, "I'm never going to that place again."
Wow, that's so fun.
Yeah, well, we had a 20 oh dang, I'm gonna forget his last name here in the moment. Last week, Tony
Lopes.
Lopes, yes, Lopes. And he did a Tuesday lunch. He's a cartoonist in Australia,
Okay.
and he came to New York, and his big day in New York was going to the Tuesday lunch, seeing Conan O'Brien, and then watching a New York Yankees game.
Yeah.
But he remembers that lunch, and it's like it was the high point of his life going to the New York
Truly,
lunch.
truly, truly wonderful. Yeah.
That's amazing. So, so you said you submitted for many years before you got accepted into the New Yorker.
Yeah.
Do you remember which cartoon was your first cartoon?
Oh yeah. Oh gosh. And you know, this story has been, you know, and I listened to a little bit of your other podcasts, and it's funny how we all have the same thing. So, anyways, I won't go too deep into the origin story of all my rejections.
You can.
But
You
one
can.
day,
You're welcome to.
I mean, what was kind of fascinating was I used to feel that I had like uh, a silent battle with Lee Lorenz, and you know, I would send cartoons in, and I thought they were great, and then I'd get the rejection. And one day, when I was about ready to, you know, walk off the pier on 43rd Street or something, there was a little on the rejection note in his distinctive handwriting in fat pencil, holding one. And, oh my God,
Ooh.
holding one, you know.
Wow.
So I guess I'm not going to kill myself today.
That's canceled.
I think he just knew exactly like when you were at the end of your rope, and he knew like, so, you know, I would hang on, and then I didn't hear anything, and then I got another little, you know, holding two.
Wow.
You know, I didn't even know. So I didn't know he was gonna, you know, move and leave. So I remember one day I was like, God damn it. And I took everything that I had ever submitted that was any good, that hadn't sold. I must have put 80 cartoons in an envelope for 1 week. I'm like, God damn it. No, I was like, God damn it. He is going to find something in here. Well, one cartoon had in hard letters, holding one. It wasn't a sale, but I thought, wow. All right, that was 5 years worth of work. Now what am I going to do? But luckily, I mean, he had seen it all before, but it was and luckily, luckily, I don't know if it was luckily or not, but Mankoff came in, and pretty fast after Mankoff came in, I sold one. And what happened was, we went to, and I remember it very well, and it kind of dates it. I think it was probably from around 2000 or something. I'm not even sure. And we were at a party at a neighbor's house on the Upper West Side, and this guy kept going over. And this is, by the way, this is the only time I have ever gotten a cartoon from real life. Like any other thing has been like, I've had to work on it. But this thing, I was like, there was this guy at a party, and he kept going over to a computer. It was like in a room, and he kept going to a computer and looking at it. And I'm like, I saw him do this like 4 times. I was like, excuse me, man, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I got an auction on eBay. I'm checking to see what the price is. I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, I'm selling like, some old Coke bottles, and I'm watching the price.
Oh my
So I
gosh.
came home and I did this cartoon of this woman sitting on an enormous tractor in her Soho apartment it's this very small cocktail party, and they're toasting, and she's saying to her friends, I got it on eBay. So I don't know, that one just sold,
Right.
and
Well, back then that was pretty topical too, because eBay was brand new.
it was
back
new.
then.
Yeah, nobody kind of knew what it was.
Mhm.
And so they put me through the paces on that one. I mean, I did get the call,
Mhm.
and I'll never forget where I was. I was in a meeting doing something that I wasn't supposed to be doing, like freelance thing or something. And I got the call, and I was like, oh my God, I sold a cartoon, blah, blah, blah. So of course I called my mom, and I said, Mom, you got to get the New Yorker next week, of course. Yeah, you've heard this story before.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. I mean, this is going to sound kind of pretentious, but what the heck? I'm a New Yorker cartoonist. Like a year or so later, I was in Paris on a freelance job, which was like insane, like the best freelance job that I ever got. And I'm with the creative director, and we're sitting at a cafe or something or somewhere, and he says, oh, my wife and I have a deal that if we're ever in a foreign place, the first person who sees somebody they know, you have to pay that person $10. And like at that moment, David Cypress walks by, and I said, David, and I'm like, and this guy's like, what? And I said, yeah, I sold, or we started talking, and I said, when I sold my first cartoon and blah blah blah, and I called my mom, and it took like a year or something for it to run, and he said the same thing happened to me.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh my gosh.
But I remember it very well. And then I remember, having worked in advertising for so long, I was used to getting my creative teeth kicked in like all the time. So just before, I don't know, it was just before it was going to run or something. Maybe it was a while before it was going to run, but I got a note from either Mankoff or his assistant saying, could you try drawing something else instead of a tractor? Make it funnier. I'm like, oh God. So I did like a 747 plane. Now, putting a 747 plane into a small New York apartment. Now, the other thing that was crazy is I used to do this stuff with just sort of like a flare, marker on stolen copy paper from the ad agency. But when I sold, I'm like, oh my God. So I like went to Sam Flax or something. I'm like, I need a rapidograph pen, and I need your heaviest paper and all this stuff. It was horrible. Every drawing I was doing was so tight and so
wow.
So finally I was able to make my way out of that. But and then Mankoff was like, no, the plane just sucks, just do the other thing.
Go back to the tractor.
Go back to the tractor.
What were you thinking?
So
wow, that's amazing.
it was a fun event.
So are you still actively submitting to the New Yorker, or have you moved
I
on
have
from that?
done a little bit. I mean, if I'm gonna be in New York, for meetings, which I am a few times a year, I'll put together a batch. But I am on, I would love to, but I'm on such an insane deadline to finish my next book. And I've decided to do this one all ink on paper, like no digital stuff.
Wow.
And
Wow.
so, and in this case, I am using good materials, but unlike the other time, I know what I'm doing. So, but it's taking a lot of time.
Yeah. What is your new book? Are you allowed to
Yeah,
say what it is?
yeah.
Mhm.
It's so I've gotten into doing these sort of nonfiction graphic narratives.
Mhm.
So I did, I did one on this philosopher, Hannah Arendt, and I did one on some recently discovered diaries in Eastern Europe.
Mhm.
And the Hannah Arendt book, to my amaze and surprise, is like a bestseller in Germany, which is
Wow.
huge because she's like huge in Germany, obviously. And the
Mhm.
Germans wanted me to, they suggested some other topics. So I joke and say, since I never took a physics class and nobody's ever written a biography on this person, I thought I'd do Albert Einstein because
Oh,
no one
Whoa.
has ever done a biography.
Really?
Yeah, he had weird hair and he used to ride a bike.
He used
That's
to
all.
be what do you call those people? Physicists?
A physicist. Yeah, he does teaches
Physicist.
physics
He was a teacher.
education. He's
He
a
was a
gym
teacher.
teacher.
He was a
No,
teacher. Okay.
anyways, but I had to find a new angle on it because I don't know. So I found out through a long story short that for a little while when he was like a nothing and Kafka was a nothing, they both kind of lived and worked in Prague. So I had to go to Prague and research. So that's what I'm
Wow.
working on. It's called and it's and actually during that year they both like came up with their hugest breakthroughs. And so I'm calling it Einstein and Kafka Land. And
Wow.
That actually sounds really interesting.
It does sound really interesting.
it sounds really interesting. It is page by page. It's wonderful to see it unfold. I remember talking to another New Yorker, a cartoonist at lunch once when I was doing my first book. I think it might have been Sid Harris, or I can't exactly remember. And they said, wait a minute, when you do one of these books, like how many drawings do you have
Mhm.
to do?
Mhm.
They kind of, their metric is like, per drawing. And
Right.
it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
I'm sure. Wow.
But it's fun, and but I want to get back into the gag work, and I do still keep notes and compile them.
Mhm.
But I'm going to be honest with you. I mean, to me, it's not it. You need to spend some hours on it. I mean,
Yeah.
you need to at least devote. I mean, I think you need to at least devote an entire week of wool gathering notes and at least a day of drawing.
Right.
I think.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So the eBay cartoon was the only one that you actually took from real life. So where do you really grab your inspiration typically?
Yeah. Well, they do come from your life,
Mhm.
but they come like transmuted in a weird way. And sometimes actually, I find maybe when you change and you do new things, because now that I'm thinking about it, so we moved to the Chicago area about 12 years ago
Mhm.
for a couple of reasons. One, our rent got insane.
Mhm.
And two, I was given a ticket by the police for riding my scooter on the wrong side of the street.
Oh God.
And I thought, let's see, that might have been when Bloomberg was mayor or something. And I was like, you're kidding me.
Mhm.
So anyways, when we moved here, we got a house. I mean, we rented a house.
Mhm.
And it was way less than our apartment. And I had three
Right.
kids. And I noticed the neighbors had like this thing hanging from their tree,
Mhm.
and birds would go sit on it. And I was like, that, and this guy was like completely obsessed with it.
Mhm.
And I'm looking at it and I'm like, that is a really weird thing. It's like a thing that hangs from a tree, and the guy puts stuff in it and birds sit on it. So I don't know. I just I saw it and I thought, what if it had like little hamburgers in it?
Yes.
So that I guess kind of came from real life,
Mhm.
because it was like I had never really seen one of those.
Right.
Yeah, we have cats. So I guess, yeah, it does. It's kind of in a weird way, like the cat
Mhm.
cartoon that I did about no one unsubscribes from Fluffy Kitty,
Right.
because we have cats, and I noticed that, and I noticed from my life that if I don't know if they still have this, but in the day, when you wanted to like unsubscribe from a website, they
Mhm.
weren't really very keen on that. They make it
Right.
really hard.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, that, but I'm not to say to force, but to, unlock those ideas, you
Mhm.
have to keep a sketchbook, and you have to, or at least I do, and you got to, let, that whatever it is, left side of the brain or right side of the
Mhm.
brain or some side of the brain work on it.
Right.
And then it may come out. Like
Mhm.
actually, and I did notice again, when you move to a new place, or maybe, you should just be noticing stuff. So I noticed when we moved here, and you live out in the suburbs. I never lived in the suburbs
Mhm.
as an adult. I only lived in the city. So I noticed like these for sale signs, and then
Mhm.
underneath it would say contract pending, and then underneath it would
Yeah.
say in detail of note, whatever. And I thought, what if there were like like
Yes.
30 of those that told like the whole saga? You know what I mean? So but you have to kind of find those
Mhm.
things. And I think I tend to think about the picture more than the words, although
Uh-huh.
I'm a writer. Um, so note to self,
Mhm.
go back and change the captions on a lot of I don't know.
But you do very good captions. I mean, you
Well,
haven't been in the
thank you.
contest, so that
Thank you.
means they're not buying your cartoons for the caption contest without
Yeah,
ripping your
no, I
caption
mean,
off.
yeah. Yeah,
Right?
I
Am
don't
I
know. I
right?
mean, I like the caption contest. I mean,
Mm,
I like your analysis of what you do with it. But I'm I think often, I mean, here I am, but I think sometimes I'm in envy of the
mm,
captions that people write. Really,
mm,
they're really good. And I spoke about how I think gag cartooning is just like the pinnacle,
mhm,
and that's not. And I'm sorry that my French isn't that good, and Sampe just passed away, but I'm sure his captions were
mhm,
marvelous. But his stories, it's of a piece of his humor. But
mhm,
there is, when I get together with other cartoonists, and we sometimes do, we all have certain ones committed. And in
mhm,
fact, some of the writing, there was a cartoon, I believe, Ziegler did it. And it was either Ziegler, it might have been Maslin. No, I think it was Maslin.
mhm,
And it was a television guy watching a TV. So it goes,
mhm.
and it was late at night, and the line was something like, and now the conscious portion of your day is over, or something like that.
Yeah.
And I still use that line, with my wife, I
Mhm.
mean, so
Right.
Yeah.
good caption, can become part of the vernacular. So
Oh,
thank you for
absolutely.
saying that. I mean,
Yeah. It's
I
Yeah.
universal.
they definitely, I've learned, from working with other cartoonists, and from my own writing, that um yeah, you can hone them, you can tweak
Mhm.
them,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. My husband and I have many captions that we talk about like as if they're dropping movie quotes, like just in regular conversation, we'll
Right.
banter
And
cartoon captions back and forth, you
yeah,
know?
and I
Same
find when
cartoon.
I get together with other cartoonists and we're
Mhm.
talking, if you misquote one,
Mhm.
they'll all jump down your
Yeah.
throat.
Yes.
um because they're really, but there's one that I always loved a lot, from even before, when I got into advertising, and it was like a picture of and whoever did it just captured the essence of what it is to work in advertising.
Mhm.
And it was like a fat king looking at a painting, you know,
Mhm.
by a Renaissance whatever guy. And the fat king is, of course, in the painting, kind of
Uh-huh.
like, and there's angels, and he's saying to the artist, um, and I'm going to get this wrong, so other cartoonists will get pissed, but it was like, I want make more angels and make them happier to see me.
That sounds right.
I think I messed it up, but you'll get it.
Yeah.
Anyhow,
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will, as long as it's a free open mic. What the heck?
Yeah.
On the notion of captions, I love what I learned from my English cartooning friends. They call the pantomime cartoon, which is the captionless cartoons.
Yes.
Obviously, the English being so precise, but I love them. I
Yeah.
love them. And
Mhm.
the European, I kind of collect old cartoon books, and
Mhm.
I've, I discovered some of the old European, cartoonists like, Andre Francois and people like that. And there was a way that when the sort of the European cartoonists kind of took the New Yorker stuff, they did them maybe because there are a lot of beautiful captionless cartoons. And I
Mhm.
remember,
Yeah.
I will not name names in this one.
Mhm.
It'll be hard. People, if they're really paying attention, may be able to guess.
Mhm.
But in any case, I went in and showed a cartoon to someone, and it was a general with like zillions of medals. And then at
Mhm.
the bottom, it had a little thing that says continued. And then there's like a private standing next to him with more medals,
Okay, that's
I've
good.
And
seen that one.
yeah, and somebody said, I like that cartoon, but it's too Europeanish.
Hmm.
I thought was kind of interesting.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
Wow.
yeah. But it's
Interesting.
sold elsewhere. So,
Mhm.
but I love those pantomime
Yeah.
cartoons, and there's some
Mhm.
great ones. The other thing I think that we don't see very much of, aside from the fact that we don't see cartoons that are kind of big anymore. I don't want to sound
Uh-huh.
like a grumpy old man. We don't see the sequential cartoons very
Yeah.
much.
Yeah.
And those were
Mhm.
Sampe was a master of those too.
Mhm. Yeah.
And they can work without captions, but
Right.
on the other hand, sometimes a very banal scene with just the right caption becomes timeless. And then I think the other thing is the drawing has such an important part of it.
Oh, definitely.
One of the guys, and I have them here because I was doing a talk, I was doing something, and I pulled out the old cartoons that I've been saving forever. And Robert Weber, who drew
Mhm.
just beautifully,
Mhm.
I remember he had a way of, through his drawings, doing sympathetic characters
Mhm.
that even when they were saying horrible things, I think the drawing could do that. And so there was like, the father talking to, his son who has just graduated college, obviously. And he says, well, son, congratulations, you graduated college. You owe me
Yes.
$167,000. Or, the sort of yuppie couple that is in buying trinkets from a Navajo woman. And they're like,
Mhm.
the woman is saying, we really want to apologize for everything we've done to your people, or something like that.
Oh,
Probably
oh,
politically incorrect, cancel it. But there
painful.
was a sweetness to it,
Mhm.
and an innocence to it, because the woman is looking at them like, you guys are complete turds. Get out of
Right.
here,
Right.
So, the drawing can help.
Mhm.
So,
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I like your cartoons where the caption is kind of built in. It's not exactly captionless, but the caption is kind of
oh,
built into the drawing.
you mean like signs and stuff?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
like your hand towels,
Yes. Yes.
the
Yeah.
his and it's always about you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I guess I like, there's a cartoon. If anyone in the listening audience wants to help me with this, they can. Or I have been trying to solve for probably 15 years. I mean, if Pat Burns sees this cartoon one more time, I think he'll throttle me. But I know there's a great cartoon in here. I just don't know what it is. And, I'm sure you've heard. And so I lived on East End Avenue, which was basically like living in frickin' Siberia to get, I had to take a bus to get to work.
Mhm.
And so I was used to waiting for buses, and particularly on Fifth Avenue. And sometimes it was very, very frustrating when you'd be waiting and and then there'd be a bus and it would say not in service, you know, and you're like, ah!
Yes.
So I want to do a gag with 2 buses. You can't see anybody on them, and one the best I've got, and I haven't been able to sell it. It's either not funny or there's no joke here. One is saying not in service, and the one next to it is like, what is it now, or something like that.
Okay.
But the bus just doesn't deliver. So have at it, anybody. It's
Yeah,
anybody's.
cool
I only
bus.
demand 15% commission
Right.
in Italian lira.
Yeah. There definitely has to be something in there.
I don't know.
Definitely.
But yeah,
Yeah.
you look for signs, you know, you look for signs, literally and figuratively. But you're lucky if you can do a twist on that, because then it's like you say, it's like pre-baked in. And I sometimes say that even a cartoon which is captionless has lines in it. I mean, it has
Right.
tail in it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the ice cream flavors with bribery and placate and, you know,
Yes,
buying your
well,
kid
you know
ice
what?
cream.
Now that you mention it, they do come from my life.
Yeah.
But not
they
directly.
have to come from your life. Where else are they coming from?
Right.
Yeah, because when we had little kids, you know, that was it, you know.
Oh, absolutely. That one can, everybody
Yeah.
can relate to that.
I mean, but sometimes
Absolutely.
they were a little bit more obscure, or, you know, it depends. Like I remember everybody was talking about free range chicken, and I did one where like a sort of a hippie butcher, you know, at one of those, like the kind of market you'd see in San Francisco, was talking to this sort of lady who's just sort of like a, you know, middle class woman who probably read in the New York Times, you know, get free range chicken. And the butcher is saying to her, free range is when we let the chickens have a head start. I thought that was pretty good.
That is good.
That is good.
Anyhow,
I'm
I think
not
it's
sure,
sold in
I'm not
another.
sure the vegan population would like that one very
you know,
much,
and
but
not to get serious or anything, but
Mm,
you got to, you know, you know, like Dylan said in his Christian phase, you've got to serve somebody. Maybe we can adapt that to saying you got to offend somebody, you know, but maybe you offend yourself, or you
Yeah.
offend like I had
Well,
one. I mean, I think some of them are pretty good. I don't know, maybe they're worth digging up. Times change, but it was like, welcome to Scarsdale, you know, a very kind of healthy snack strictly enforced, you know. It's because, you know, moms, you know, are like, you know, our kids can only have
little
carrots.
yeah, exactly. Kids can only have carrots.
Yeah, that's the danger these days, is that, you know, too many people are offended by anything. You know,
Yeah.
how do you be funny when you're going to offend somebody? You know, you have to ignore it. I guess you just do it.
I truly don't know. I mean, you know, the National Lampoon used to run some very dark cartoons. Charles Rodriguez, I don't know, man, this guy was like crazy off the hook. I don't think he ever sold to the New Yorker. Sold to the Lampoon, but yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I think humor, to me, you know, part of what makes things funny is that they have an edge to them. They say things that you wouldn't necessarily say out loud in polite conversation, but it's
totally
funny.
But
you
I
know?
think, you're right. They allow you to express thoughts that are you know, not what you should be expressing, and that's the thing. But I guess if you find a venue or an angle, like Adams did with horror and death, you know, he could use that as a way to critique, you know, bad marriages, or, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
And you don't want to, you know, stuff. I think things that are funny aren't offensive, but that's my point of view.
Right.
And I'll just leave it at that.
Right.
I mean, in other words, if you're gonna, like, yeah, it's okay. It's funny to, like, you know, the Three Stooges were funny, but they were like all in the same family, and it's really stupid. Like, oh, a guy got, you know, hit over the head with a brick.
Right.
But that isn't really funny. You
Right.
know, I mean, it's not. It is really funny, but it's
That's
not.
it.
It's funny because it's the Three Stooges, but
Right.
you know,
In real
like
life.
Yeah. I
if
mean
you did a
that.
joke that was like, "Oh, I'm going to show a guy walking down the street and he blows up,"
Right.
yeah, like maybe you would like it.
Right.
You would probably wouldn't even like
Oh,
Well, I mean, I like the dark humor, the a little bit off color, like not overtly offensive, but
Oh
just
my
something that
God.
has like an edge. And to me, it's like when the world becomes so politically correct that you can't laugh about, something that's a little bit off color, then,
mhm.
where are we headed? I have this Facebook group dedicated to the New Yorker
Yeah.
cartoons and the contest. And every Friday I do this thing called Filterless Friday, where like it's like you're allowed to post a, off color cartoon.
Okay.
It's just kind of dedicated to that day, but I can't tell you how many times I've gotten comments like, this isn't funny. And, how dare you post this? And I'm like, yes, it is funny.
Wow, good for
It is
you.
funny. I'm
You
sorry.
have a thick
I'm
skin
sorry.
to be able to deal with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes, people will tell me that's offensive to women or that's, this and that. And I'm like, it's a do you realize it's a cartoon?
I yeah,
It's,
yeah.
you know,
I don't know. I mean, uh, you know, the great E.B. White, I think, I'll misquote him, but he said, the problem with trying to just define humor or defining humor is like dissecting a frog. It's really ugly and the frog dies in the process or something like that.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean,
Mhm.
but there are some people who, um, like I think of Leo Cullum, who I
Mhm.
never met, but I mean, maybe I met him at the Cartoonist Association. He
Uh-huh.
was a pilot, so I guess he was flying all over the place. But he just, the fact that he had the first sort of funny cartoon after 9/11,
Mhm.
unbelievable.
Yeah.
And I have on the wall, or I
Right.
had on the wall here, one of his that I saw that I kept from my files, which was like a businessman. Of course, we don't go to work anymore. No one wears suits anymore. So
Mhm.
we've lost, some stuff, but he's getting ready to go to the office. And in his closet, he has like you know, a big spool that has his ties on it. And he's just
Mhm.
cut off a length of it. He's like, he just like toilet paper.
Yeah.
So you got to find things to poke fun at. Like
Mhm.
I don't think this one ever sold, but I thought it was funny.
Mhm.
It could be scatological, but sometimes I find scatological stuff funny. I
Uh-huh.
don't know. And it was the graduation of the I see I was really pre-med because I don't even know the doctors that work on your where you go poo poo.
Oh,
Proctologist.
proctologist.
Proctologist or
Yeah.
gastroenterologist or something.
Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
So it was the thing said, College of Gastroenterology graduation. And
Mhm.
there's the professor up there, and all the diplomas are on a giant roll. And he's like, just come up and tear one off. I thought that was funny, but
It is funny.
it's scatological though, and it's kind of
It
icky,
is.
and no family magazine will run, or maybe only children's magazines will run it. Who knows?
Kids love that
to
humor.
children get to do
Yes.
Captain
Yeah.
Underpants. The other thing is, as long as I have this free microphone and all
Mhm.
these listeners, something I don't totally understand, and I'm not sure there's an answer to this, but I do. I grew up and I started reading more than the movie reviews in the New Yorker, and I started
Mhm.
reading a lot of the fiction. And guess what? They run some very good writing in there. Amazing. But they use dirty words in the writing.
Really?
Try and sell a caption with anything like that in it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know. Those are for more wise minds than me to figure out.
I think Mancock got away with one once, didn't he? He
With
threw an
I
what?
think
F-bomb
there
in
was
there.
possibly got the F word in, the F bomb.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Possible.
Yeah. But
But he
you're
was
right.
the editor, so he
Yeah,
bought
he
it.
could do that.
And he also knew when like the head editor was going to be on vacation. So I'm just saying, you know.
Yeah.
We can
But
sneak it in on that week, see if anybody notices.
But you know, I mean, I guess on a slightly, you know, to put a little serious, just a question, like they deal with adult topics in the writing,
Mhm,
right.
but
right.
somehow because cartoons are, let's just say, the first thing, and for many people the only thing they look at in that
Mhm,
publication, with all due
Mhm.
respect, and believe me, I've read every story by every good writer,
mhm.
you know, but cartoons, they're the funny pages, you know.
Right.
Mm,
Right. They're
yeah,
kind of like considered the kids page almost. I mean,
yeah.
It's the
the
relief, you
ghetto
know,
of the
it's comic relief.
Mhm.
And I
Well,
don't know. I mean, maybe I'm getting on a little bit of a soapbox here, and I'm
yeah.
not saying they should be like super serious, but
no.
Well, I just hope they don't go the way of losing all of their edge and all of their humor. Like, you know, if I see another cartoon of, you know, the pandemic makes me not want to ever leave the house again, you know, or you know,
yeah,
you know, I'm such an introvert. Like those cartoons just get boring after a while, you know, and
yeah,
I think that you know they do need a little bit of an edge,
Yeah.
you know,
yeah, I
like
think so. I mean, as I guess I was doing a talk, because here's like one of my Charles Adams books
mhm,
just sitting right here. And I mean, they're not all great. I mean,
mhm,
obviously, but every now and then, um, I mean, could they get away with this today?
mhm,
There are two bad guys like having a, you know, shooting, you know, out the
mhm,
window, and their
yeah,
mom, who's also a bad guy, got the same kind of bad guy expression, is sweeping up all the bullet casings.
mhm,
Oh,
yeah,
yes.
I mean,
right. Not sure,
is
you know,
that
they
not
wouldn't
sure we
publish
could
that. Yeah.
get away with
No,
that?
they
And
wouldn't do that
And
anymore.
you
what,
know, and what that says to me is that, okay, I don't exactly know who's being offended by that.
mhm,
Bad guys, moms, gun manufacturers, I'm not sure,
mhm,
movies. But what that's saying to me is that, damn it, people were smarter than us in 1960.
right, right.
I don't want to say that. I don't want that
Mhm,
to be the case.
yeah.
Anyhow,
One of my favorite cartoons in the New Yorker is a Chris Wyant cartoon where there's a husband and wife and they've been obviously role playing in the bedroom.
oh,
And the
yeah.
wife is sitting on the edge of the bed all forlorn, and the husband is wearing like a stethoscope or something. And he says, well, as your doctor, I'm medically obligated to say something about your weight.
oh, oh God.
It's so awful, but it's so funny. It's so funny.
It is. It is.
It's just like,
Because
yeah.
it's true. It's just true. It's about love.
Yeah.
It's about why do we get together?
Mm,
Why do we let people into our lives who say completely ignorant things to us?
right, right,
Like, that doesn't make sense.
right.
At least that's what it's about to me.
And it makes you uncomfortable enough that you know, you have to laugh about it, you
But I
know.
do think, you know, times change and stuff
Mm,
changes, and you know, and gosh, I look at some cartoons from back in the day, and oh my
mm,
God,
yeah,
they changed the casting,
yeah.
or, you know,
There's a Sean, what's his last
Sean
name?
Day.
Sean Day. Yeah, I was
Yeah,
gonna say Daly. There's a cartoon of his. It's a captionless cartoon
yeah,
that's a woman shoe shopping.
yeah, right.
And there's a gazillion boxes all over the floor. And the shoe salesman is sitting in front of her on the chair on the stool in front of the
Yeah,
seat. And he's reaching down into one of the shoe boxes, but it's a gun.
right.
Like, because he's ready to kill her because she's been trying on
Or
all these different
himself,
shoes,
or
maybe
himself,
himself.
you
Yeah.
know.
But you know, and that's that's a funny
Well,
cartoon, but it would never be published today.
yeah. So I
Mm,
guess, you know, and I look at the cartoons that are published every week, and I try and see the ones that make me
mm,
laugh, or,
mm,
you know, that make me. I mean, my barometer,
mm,
and I is, do I like let's just say if Matt Diffie, or the first time I saw some of Ed Steed's cartoons, let's
Oh,
just say Ed
he's
Steed.
like,
When
he's
I
dark.
saw, staff pics of the like
Yes.
pieces of popcorn,
Yes.
I wanted to like throw my desk at the wall.
That is one of my all-time.
I mean, it made
that
me
is.
furious.
Yes.
When I saw Joe Dater, I think Joe did the first one about the praying mantis or something,
Mhm.
Classics.
and that's my barometer.
Mhm.
And I guess you could say, oh well, staff picks doesn't offend anybody except idiots that work at Barnes and Noble. So that's
But
okay.
I know you did a compilation of Jewish
Yeah, I
cartoons.
did.
And I recently I just bought that book. I'm waiting for it. But
Oh.
one of my all-time favorite New Yorker cartoons is a Danny Shanahan with an old couple, the man coming into the house
Mhm.
and the older woman greeting him at the door. And the caption is, "You slept with her, didn't you?"
Okay. I love that. And you want to know
It's
why?
so great.
I typically hate bad puns,
Mhm.
but if they're that bad,
Right.
I love them.
Yes, me
Yeah.
too. Me too.
Yeah.
But that
I
is
mean,
just
Mankoff has got, the Orthodox guy walking down the street on the
Mhm.
cell phone, and he's like, I'm available anytime, 24/6.
Yep. Yeah. I love that one.
And thank goodness. Look, cartoons are, for something that is so, jokey, people have suffered violence.
Mhm.
People take them pretty seriously.
Mhm.
So I don't know. I
Yeah.
feel like the dialogue, there were people in writing, because I'm a writer and a cartoonist,
Mhm.
and I read some criticism by some, literary critics from back in the day. Oh my God, did they hate the New Yorker writing?
Mhm.
Oh, it's so
Mhm.
mannered. I'm like, there are people who hate J.D. Salinger. There are people who hate
Mhm.
John Updike. There are people who hate these people. Oh, they're so
Yeah.
mannered. They're so John Cheever, this and that.
Mhm.
Um, the New Yorker cartoons may have been, I mean, they had a rap for being somewhat,
Mhm.
everything was a cocktail party. Well,
Right.
okay. But I do think what they did was they provided a kind of a comedy of manners. And
Mhm.
unfortunately, yes, it was to these sort of poser, au bourgeoisie, or whatever
Mhm.
you want to call it, people,
Mhm.
but not always.
Yeah.
Right.
Sometimes it was just funny.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't, again, I see cartoons in the New Yorker that I think are still funny.
Mhm.
And I think, I mean, I had a friend in New York who was a comedy writer for like the I don't know, the late night talk shows and stuff
Mhm.
like that. And he wrote jokes. He actually wrote jokes for a famous comedian that I shall not name the name of this comedian, but a very famous comedian.
Mhm.
And we'd get together, and oh my God, all he wanted to do was be a New Yorker cartoonist.
Right.
And we'd work, and so he was like an envy of what I did,
Mhm.
and I was an envy of what he did, but not as much an envy of what he did. Like I'm like, come on, I can write jokes for this guy too,
Right.
But it
Right.
is hard. I'm sure it's a craft, but
Yeah.
people who try to do this, I mean, Roger Ebert, I mean, David Mamet,
Mhm.
I mean, David Mamet's an unbelievable writer. I don't think he ever sold a New Yorker cartoon.
Right.
Yeah.
He
Right.
has some funny cartoons. He actually self-published a book of cartoons.
Oh, wow.
Well, let me just say, is there one last question that you guys have? I don't even know if there was one question. Oh, you tried some questions. I'm just spieling.
Oh,
I'm
boy.
schlepping. No?
Oh boy, I think you got us on that one.
All right, well,
What is your favorite cartoon that you've done yourself?
Okay, there it is.
gosh, wow. My favorite that I've done myself. Well, it would have to be one that hasn't sold. Gosh. Well, it's, they're all my children.
Mhm.
Actually in the Jewish cartoon book, this always gets a laugh from any denomination, and it was a three panel one, and it was how Jewish men age, and it's the exact same guy, but his pants, he's bald with glasses, but his first one, his pants are at his waist,
Mhm.
and the next one they're about 8 inches higher, like at his belly button, and the next one they're like up around his chest. And it kind of works for, I think it even works for Scandinavians. I
Yeah.
have a feeling it may well work
Yeah,
for people from
It's
all corners of the world.
Yeah,
And I don't know, I like that one,
that's
but I like
awesome.
so many of them. And thank you so much. You guys have been it's fun talking to you.
Oh, it was fabulous.
Yeah,
Thank you so
great
much
having
for
you on here,
coming on.
Ken.
Okay.
Yes.
And submit some cartoons with bad captions so they'll buy them for the contest so that
Oh
we can
yeah.
have it.
Well, yes, I will do. I am definitely gonna start submitting again. My book goes in at the very end of this year, and I've got
Mhm.
a little archive of stuff. And I would be remiss if I didn't say WWW. That stands for
Mhm.
World Wide Web. That's the internet for George W. Bush. World Wide Web, KenKrimstein.com, and you can see my grossly out of date website.
I thought your website was
Oh,
very nice.
that's
I liked your website.
Well, I mean, I just need to update some of the events and
Mhm.
stuff, but yeah, take a look at it, and thank you. All right,
All
thanks,
right.
guys.
Thank you
Bye.
so much, Ken.
Okay.
Have a good
Thanks,
night.
Ken.
Bye.
Good night.